Hi, this is Gabe. Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about my Delta table saw. This is a model 36-714. It has a rip capacity from the blade to the edge of the saw, or excuse me, from the blade to the rip fence of 31.5 inches. So there's quite a few little things that I've done over the years to this to make it more suitable to my needs, and some of the jigs and stuff that I've purchased aside of making my own. And anyway, that's what's in store in this video. So first and foremost, what I want to talk about is the overhead dust collection. I got rid of the standard blade guard that was right here. I decided to make this because no matter what I've done to dust collection, I was still wearing it in my face because of the type of cutting I was doing with a lot of segmenting and so forth. I was still getting a lot of blowback. So I ended up making this. This is fully adjustable. There's a pin here on the back, and then this raises up and down, and it can actually go much lower than that. It can actually go all the way down to where it's like a ½ inch above the top of the table, or if you just want it out all the way, all together, it'll fit in like that, which is pretty cool. This is the thickness of the blade. I'm using an Irwin blade, combination 60-tooth blade here. My normal blade that I use is a Forest combination blade, and both of them are great blades, but I use this one more because it has a flat tooth blade. On the Forest, it has like a V groove, which doesn't work good for Celtic knots and things like that. This is a side view of that, and it's just a pin with a little ring on it to help you pull that in and out, and that can slide up and down. This just comes right off, and you can see how that is made. I just used some acrylic plexiglass and made that myself using CA glue to glue it together, and this works very well. If I wanted to remove it, I can just take that out, use the tool that comes with the saw, loosen this up, and then I just slide that out. I followed the same footprint as the original splitter that came with the tool that held the blade guard, and this works very well. And I sort of relieved the front right here too, tapered it like a point so that when any wood hits that, it splits off it, so it works really good. I don't know if you saw this or not, but next to my off-on switch right here, I have some double-sided tape, 2 layers, because I share the space with my wife's car, and the car door hits right here, so that's just a little padding to keep the car door from getting dinged, or to protect my table saw from the car, depending on how you want to look at it. So the very first jig I made for my table saw was this zero clearance throat plate. This is made out of some bamboo flooring a friend of mine gave me from work, and I've put a lot of miles on this thing, and it's broken here and here. This slot was for the splitter from what you saw, and it's getting a little unstable, so I don't use this right now. I need to make another one, so I just put the standard one back in here. And if you've seen this in a previous video, I have a 15-degree slot right here, an angle slot, and I can rotate this, and you know, it has the same bolt pattern from where this is screwed down right here. So on a previous project I was working on, where I was making miniature butterfly keys, I need to make another throat plate, but rather than make a fresh new one, I just cut that slot in there, and that worked well for me. The next thing I did, well, actually, the very first thing that I purchased was this center finder, but this was for, or not a center finder, a push stick, but this was for a previous table saw that I had. But using this, I come to realize I was doing a lot of cuts with the band, or excuse me, with the table saw here when I was segmenting, and I was ripping right into here. And you know, this was like 15 bucks or whatever it was, still a lot cheaper than cutting into your hand. So you know, this is money well spent, you know. But I ended up making a template out of this using some good MDF. And if you're getting started in woodworking, MDF is your friend. You can make a lot of jigs out of MDF, or even woodworking projects for that matter. And just to template things out and try and figure out how things work. But anyway, MDF is, I've always used, it's been my go-to for a lot of jigs. And you can see this right here started out really big. And over the years, I really wore it down. So time to replace this again. And MDF is cheap, so, you know, not a big deal. And well worth the money you spend on a sheet of MDF, even at today's prices. One of the other things I bought when I bought this table saw at Rockler, like I said in a previous video, I bought this table saw brand new. And one of the things I got when I bought this were these magnetic feather boards. I've seen a lot of these in the woodworking magazines over the years in different plans, and I've made my own in the past, and they were kind of cumbersome. You had to clamp them down certain ways, and then with projects I was working on, it was in the way, it wasn't in the way, so it was just a pain in the butt. These, you just turn that dial, locks it in place since it's magnetic, and those must be rare earth magnets, because look, you can't even, those won't even break free. So these are well worth the money you spend on them. They're probably 25 bucks each. I don't know exactly, but I think that's probably what I paid. Anyway, well worth the money you spend buying these. And these, I just stick these on the back of the table saw out of the way when I'm not using them. So it makes those real nice and easy. One of the best things, or one of the most important things you're going to need, is safety glasses. And even with, I have multiple pairs of safety glasses in case I lose one. But if you have someone working with you in the garage and they don't have their own safety glasses, it's always nice to have a pair handy that you can just sanitize and quickly give them so that they can wear, because you don't want to be liable for getting something in someone's eye. Now, if you're like me, you're getting older, I keep a pair of readers in the garage, and then when I'm using these on the table saw, these are safety glasses that are designed to go over readers. You can get these at most home centers, and really, really valuable. Invest in something like that if you need that. Other more important thing, not a requirement to actually have dust protection, but I like using a respirator when at all possible. Cutting exotic woods, for me, certain ones like Bacote, Zircote, Cocobolo, and those type rosewoods, those really affect my lungs. I have to put on a jacket, gloves, and all kinds of stuff, and zip it all the way up to my neck just to try and keep that sawdust off me. But when I breathe it, it's even worse. It messes me up for days. So I keep a respirator handy, and I have several packets of replacement filters in my drawer over here. So these are invaluable, especially if you have any sort of aversion to any type of sawdust. Now, if you followed me at all in any of my segmenting videos, you know that this is my go-to jig for pen segmenting on the table saw. So prior to me actually getting involved in pen segmenting, this was my miniature sled, if you will. And I had 45s actually on both sides. So I can cut right or left, and then I just modified that. From that, I modified that to this for pen segmenting. And prior to that, I had a really big crosscut sled, the length of the whole table saw, when I was building my entertainment center. And the whole thing about jigs is jigs are designed for repeatability and accuracy. And miter saws are great for cuts unless you have a specialized bench with stops. You know, that's the only way you're really going to get a really good accurate cut that's repeatable. But for most people, they don't have that in their garage. And I have something similar, but I don't have the fence set up for that. So it's just easier to make a crosscut sled. And I used it for one project, which took me about a year to build, and it was my entertainment center at my old house. And here's a picture of that. Okay, so I used that segment, I used the crosscut sled to make all the doors, and it was invaluable. Like I said, repeatable and accurate, and everything fit together perfectly. But there was a lot of other stuff involved in it, but as far as the cuts were, nothing could beat that crosscut sled. But I haven't used it after that project. It sat in the garage for another 4 years, and it was so big that it just took up space. So I just took it apart and scavenged off what I could off of it, and then actually never needed it since. So once I got involved in the pen segmenting, this was my go-to jig for that, for crosscuts. The miter saw is great. So this is my miter gauge, not miter saw. I've got a hole here and a hole here. This is the gauge that came with the saw. This is my other go-to jig here. So you can see what that looks like from the top view. And this is, I have it marked for 30, 45, and 90. And this really works out well for Celtic knots, 90 degrees, of course, and for my 30-degree Celtic knots. You know, and these things just, they work as expected, never have a problem with them. So, a piece of scrap wood and a nice little addition to your miter gauge, and that will take this to the next level. So when I bought this saw, I had the option of upgrading this, which basically had the long handle right here, and it had a locking mechanism on the back side. And to me, it looked like it did just the exact same thing, with me adding that piece of wood that I just showed you on here. In my opinion, just as accurate. Never have had a bad cut with this particular gauge. And also it has locking tabs here on the back too, so I know it's accurate. So instead of upgrading this, this was an option to come with the saw. It was either an upgraded miter gauge or one of these. This is a tenioning jig. And this thing, I've always wanted one of these. Over the years of subscribing to magazines, I've always seen these in magazines, and they were really big jigs. A lot went into making these, and just layers and layers of wood. And it just looked like so complicated. Unless you're really bent on making your own jigs, nothing wrong with that. But for me, I'd rather get something that's purpose-built and machined just like this for the saw. And let me show you how good this tool or jig works. It has a lot of functionality. Of course, this is for clamping. You loosen this up, you can adjust that back and forth. This loosens so you can adjust your angle. I just keep that at 90. And then over here, you can loosen this, and then with this over here, you can move this back and forth. So that's really cool. So it has, also there's another gauge here, and that gets your angle right there also. So years ago, when I used to subscribe to the woodworking magazines, you know, every 3 or 4 issues there would be someone else coming out with a jig on how to make one of these, and they were usually big and convoluted. Just so much went into making one that, you know, this was like $110 option. So I don't know why anybody would even bother making one of those unless that was something you were really bent on doing because you like to make your own jigs. And there's nothing wrong with making your own jigs, but when it's machined and designed for a specific tool, you know it's going to work and work well. So that's why I went with this option. And you can see you know, that just, it slides effortlessly on there. And, you know, it's made for the saw, came with the saw. So one of the main things that I've done here is I added this Shop Fox mobile base when I bought the saw. And this thing makes it easier to move around. It also has wheel locks. And because of my back, I put 2x4s on edge, cradled inside here to raise it up another 3.5 inches. That's why you see these pieces of wood right here all the way around, so it's still locked in place as if this was sitting inside here. I did this a couple years later because you can see this dropped all the way down inside there. So I raised up the height of this. So the height from the tabletop is 38 inches high. So that makes it a lot easier to work on because table saws seem to only come in one size, low, and everyone else, you know, people come in different sizes. I'm not that tall, and I was still bending over quite a bit. Or even when my back was good, it was still a pain in the back after I would do this all day long because it's not a position I'm used to being in. Years ago, Delta used to make a router shaper, and this has an integrated lift mechanism, so you don't have to buy a router and a dedicated lift in order to make, you know, something work that should come together. You used to be able to find these at Lowe's. I bought this off of a friend of mine at work, and these weren't expensive when they came out new. I think they were under $500, probably under $400. But anyway, this used to have a big aluminum tabletop, a fence, dust collection, all the bells and whistles with a stand. I didn't have room for all that, so I just got rid of everything on top, bolted it to some hardboard, and now this thing works good for me. I've never had any problems with it. I keep a rare earth magnet attached right there for my collet, a 1/4 inch, and that works out really well. My other table saw accessory is my shop stool. So my shop stool I've had for quite a while. I keep it tucked under my table saw, and it has wheels. It rolls. This lifts. It's very comfortable. When I'm doing something, you actually have to sit on it to lower it because that piston is so strong. And great addition to the shop. I use my table saw a lot for just assembling and drawing and things like that when I'm working on different designs for pens. And it comes in handy to have something to sit on in the garage. Besides that, it's very comfortable too. So, like I said, in order to get it to sit, you know, anyway, that works out really neat. Last but not least is my Outfeed table. This is also 38 inches. Just a little below like 37 and 7/8, just a little bit of a fall on this right here, so that when you transition that wood across, it lands on here. If I'm ripping long stuff, I turn it lengthwise. Otherwise, sideways works great. For me, this allows a lot more flexibility, and it's cheaper to do something like this. And you can see I've really beat this tabletop up. I use it for staining, gluing, assembling, painting, you name it. You know, for 40 bucks that I paid for it 10 years ago, well worth the money I spent. These little PVC legs, 12 3/4 inches. They just slide on there, and I've got some 1/2 inch rare earth magnets that those are screwed in with, and I can either attach these to the back of the table saw. I keep them attached to the front of my bandsaw because this is the 38 inches. This is also the same height as my my Grizzly G0513 bandsaw. So this table, Outfeed table, will work off of both my table saw or my bandsaw. And to put it on, because it's PVC, it just sort of grips by itself. And yeah, works really good. Never had a problem with it. Doesn't walk on me when I'm pushing wood through here onto this. Like I said, I don't really use the table saw anymore, other than if I'm doing something small or light. But if I do need it, I have it. But it's not a tool that I would ever get rid of. But let's see, I think that's about all the jigs that I have for the table saw. So thanks for watching. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And have a good day. Hey, this is Gabriel Castro. Thanks for watching my YouTube channel. You can click on the link right here and subscribe. You can watch a video series right here, or the latest video right here.